You are listening to Zen and the Art of Triathlon.
Well, hey there, all you triathlon studs and studettes. This is Coach Brett with another great episode of Zen and the Art of Triathlon, the podcast where we go long on endurance and learn a lot about ourselves along the way. All right, I am leaving the pool. It's Wednesday morning. Got in a nice swim. Talk about that in a second. Today's episode is going to be all about Garmin Unbound, formerly known as the Dirty Kanza. It has gotten a lot of bad press due to how much mud there was. So what I'm going to do is the good and bad of Garmin. I've waited a little bit, waited for the reviews to start coming in, the videos to start coming in. For example, the video feed itself was atrocious, and pros deserve better than that. We've learned that from Pro Ironman. But like I'll say again later in the show, it's just rude and ugly to criticize. You ought to give suggestions on how to make things better. So that's what we're going to do on this show. I also talk a little bit about how Kai and I have been battling back and forth over two different KOMs. It actually made me puke. And mixing in a little bit of triathlon news about, for example, the tragedy that happened in Ironman Hamburg with somebody getting killed out on the bike course. But we can get to all that in just a minute. Let's cover the swim. I've been going big on the weekends, 4 or 5 hour days, back to back, Saturday and Sunday. And it's really hot here. So what that does is it dehydrates me. It would dehydrate you too. And then I struggle getting up and going on Monday morning. And followers of the show know that I love to swim on Monday mornings. It's a great way to start the week. It's nice and easy. I swim pretty soft and chill and relaxed. And Monday, I just could not do it. I felt ill from the dehydration and all that. So I'm working on trying to schedule that out a little bit better. It crossed my mind while I was swimming that I need to start working towards doing a self-supported Ironman probably this fall. I might do a self-supported half Ironman first to get back on track with that. That's what I always recommend is people do half Ironmans before Ironmans. So I should just take my own advice. But doing the swim today, Wednesday, I missed a swim on Monday, and I haven't been mountain biking really lately. And mountain biking is a full body workout. And I noticed when I started mountain biking that I didn't need to do as much upper body weight stuff because you're wrenching the bike around. Sometimes you got to carry the bike, push it up a hill. Depends on, your local mountain biking course. So I'm swimming along going, man, why do my shoulders hurt? I missed a swim. All right, I try to swim 3 times a week, and I missed my Monday swim, so that doesn't help. And then I thought, yeah, but there's a little bit more. It's more than that, because I miss swims on rare occasion. It doesn't feel like that. Oh, what's different? It's like, I've been gravel biking a lot and not mountain biking. And also I was looking at the weather. If you're a triathlete, cyclist, runner, outdoor pool swimmer, you're addicted to your weather feed. I use Weather Underground, and I look at the 10-page index because it's going 10-day index because it's going to show the wind direction, temperature, highs, lows, humidity, everything all in one big graph. It's freaking awesome, and I highly recommend that. I was like, man, it's going to be hot, and it's going to be dry-ish. It'll still be really humid, but no rain is what I mean. For the next week through the weekend. And I thought, oh man, I should do some mountain biking, mix in some mountain biking. And also it crossed my mind. I'm like, man, when I was doing full Ironman training, what worked? And I think what I was doing was a bike ride on Saturday, a long ride on Saturday, and then a long run on Sunday. Or I think actually vice versa. Sunday, long biking, starting early in the morning, safer. People down here in the Bible Belt of Tixish are usually in church. Not everybody by any means, but it's just more people are in church. And the roads are a lot safer. They're a lot quieter on Sunday morning. I call my long Sunday bike rides by myself or with just like one other person with all the nature and everything. I call that my own version of church. I love it. Get out there and nature, see everything. And yeah, what I should be doing is transitioning my schedule, my training schedule from back-to-back big bike days and trying to find some running in because I'm not running enough. I need to run more. And I'm not getting in a long run. I'm doing short runs, but I was overcoming a running injury, so it's okay to do short runs. So an hour at a pop 3 times a week is where I'm at. And really what I should be doing is 2 short runs and 1 long run at least to get in the volume of running. And that's what tends to work, is a big bike day on one day and a big run day on the other. So maybe I'll do a long run on Saturday and then a long swim on Sunday. See, this is the thought process when you go in on coaching yourself. This is what it's like. You've got to analyze what's going on, how you feel, figure out what works. 99% of triathlon, of success in Ironman training is scheduling. The workouts, you don't go all that hard. You just need to do a lot of them. So then it becomes a scheduling war. And then on the race day, it's a battle of who can eat the most on the bike, especially, and then into the run. Anyway, let's get started with the rest of the show, but let's do a little commercial break. If you would like endurance coaching from yours truly, I have a couple spots still open. I coach using the industry standard Training Peaks, and it's really great. It's the best stuff. It's the stuff the Olympians use, the world's best use, Ironman champions use. It's fantastic. I give you workouts that match your ability, and then you comment back how they're doing for you, and then we build from there. We tweak and build, and it's really great. We increment the volume ever so slightly, week after week. And with your feedback, I look to see what you need to work on, look at your weakness, build on that, and give you advice from 20 years of triathlon experience of how to fit it in your schedule. All you have to do is reach out to me, texafornia@gmail.com, Texafornia, T-E-X-A, Fornia @gmail.com. Put coaching somewhere in the subject line or in the body of the email itself. I only charge $199 a month for full customized triathlon coaching one-on-one. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with the rest of the show. All right, for this episode, we're going to do something really cool. We're going to do the best and worst of the biggest bike race in North America, the Unbound Gravel. And I was about to say the 200 miler, but there's all different lengths of this race. There's a 25, a 50, a 100, a 200. There's even a 350 mile race. And each is unique and amazing in its own way. And this has become the Gravel World Championships, even though there is a Gravel World Championship somewhere else, but nobody really cares about that. It's this one. This is the big event. And it also becomes sort of an expo of equipment, new changes in the industry, and also how to race, how not to race, how to hold an event, how not to hold an event. All kinds of things happen at this thing. And it was very dramatic this year because they had a lot of rain and mud, which has made this very controversial, actually. And what I did is I took notes over the past few days, as the video and commentary started rolling in. So I took everything from everybody's perspective, read up on forums, saw all kinds of stuff from all kinds of people. And it looks like the dust and the mud has settled enough to start drawing some conclusions here. And it is really something else. It's quite a spectacle. I watched it sort of live. I went for a bike ride that morning, and then as the video started rolling in, it was like, oh my gosh. And I have commentary just on the live coverage itself, and it was pretty bad. But it's also a lot of fun, and a lot of people had a really good time. So there's definitely some upsides to this race, some good along with the bad. Okay, before we get into that, though, we do have some triathlon news. There was a tragedy at Ironman Hamburg, where a motorcyclist that was supporting the race, actually it was a media motorcyclist, so I think there was the driver, and then there was the person on the back possibly, with a camera or something like that. And they were covering the pros, and they hit another cyclist coming the other way. And the motorcyclist got killed, which is actually a surprise because the motorcyclist has a motorcycle under them and, full head helmet. And the cameraman got severely injured, and of course the triathlete got severely injured. And there was a lot of commentary on that based on the fact it was a narrow two-way road with triathletes going both ways, which is kind of dangerous enough in my personal opinion, where you got to really watch out for that. And then there's motorcycles jammed in there. They said somewhere, and this is just what I've heard, 12 motorcycles following the pros. And so one motorcycle got off to the side of the other motorcycles, and the motorcycles are like parallel to the pros, which is enough of a problem with drafting that it shouldn't happen. But trying to get video footage of all that. And I'm going to talk later about there should be way more live coverage, so this is the downside of too much live coverage, is a motorcycle was passing the other motorcycles to move up, and it hit a triathlete head on. And the crazy thing is there's actual video footage that you can find online of it happening. And of course, there's a lot of criticism for why didn't they cancel the race? And there's both sides to that. Why did they acknowledge more about the race having a tragic event? So all around, not good. Jan Frodeno was in the race along with a lot of other top name pros. This is quite a big issue, quite a tragedy. And our hearts go out to all those involved in hoping that they make some changes on how they cover these races and make them safer. All right, on my own side, personal racing, you can go to Instagram, which is Zen Triathlon on Instagram and Twitter, and see commentary and quite the storyline of Kai and I going back and forth trying to take KOMs from each other. And there's two different ones. And for those who don't know, Kai is my 18-year-old son who's trying to go pro mountain biker. He already races Cat 1, and the kid is amazing. And I went for a long bike ride on Saturday morning, and when I got done, I noticed that on this Jeep trail that turns into a pasture road and then finishes with a steep uphill that takes like 11 minutes, that I was actually within a minute of having the KOM on this thing. And it's long, it's like, seriously, it's a 9 to 10 to 11 minute. Well, it was a 10 minute and change KOM until Kai showed up. And then it was kind of embedded in like this crazy gravel adventure ride where I rode my gravel bike through a mountain bike park, did a little bit of mountain biking even, and then rode this Jeep trail that turns into a pasture road on the way back. Anyway, so I'm looking later at this on Saturday afternoon, and it said, hey, you've got the third fastest time ever on this one Strava segment. And I thought, oh, cool. So I tell Kai. Kai gets really interested. We go and do the exact same ride again on Sunday. But these are 3-hour rides, and I'm also mixing in 1-hour runs before I ride, and it's hot here in Texas. So this is now Sunday, and it's towards the end of the ride. It's the last hour of the ride. And so you can just imagine how dehydrated I am. I was 7 hours into 8 hours of training and probably 5 pounds dehydrated over time. That seems to be what I lose over the weekends. And Kai and I are riding together now on Sunday, doing the exact same route, and he wants to take this KOM. And I could just tell, like, I was going to be in trouble. So he goes first. He disappears over the horizon into the woods. And then I said, now it's my turn. And I just realized I was gonna do good just to freaking finish the thing without dying. And so I do the Strava live segment thing that you can show on your Garmin's and probably other bike computers too. And I was using my watch, and I could see it on my watch. It's such a cool feature. You ought to Google it and check it out. You can see live how you're doing versus the KOM or KWAM if you're the queen. And then you can see live how you're doing versus yourself, your own personal best times. It's really neat. And it'll teach you how to pace yourself for this, which is just a great feature. So I realized just a few minutes in that I'm not going to beat the KOM. I'm going to do well just to beat my own personal time, which I tried. And I did, actually. I beat it. Like, I got the exact same time, but it's like a millisecond. So it says that it's my fastest time, but it reads the exact same time. And Kai was waiting for me at the finish line, and he came up to me and he said, "How'd it go?" And I put up my hand like, "Hold on, let's pause this conversation." And he said, "You all right?" And I kept my hand up, and I stood there for a second, did not want to get off the bike, and then puked. And then I puked again, and then I puked again. So I puked 3 times. It was all liquid. And because what I'd been doing was fueling and drinking as if it was a, like a long, easy workout ride, which means a lot more fuel, a lot more water, because you're always thinking about tomorrow and recovery. And I had just, overdone myself with with the effort and the heat. So Kai got me to puke, and he beat the time by like a full minute almost. It's down into the 9 minutes now. So he's very excited about this KOM, right? And then that was Sunday. And then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm at work, minding my own business. Kai's out on a bike ride. He's out of school. And I get all these alerts that my KOM has been taken on a completely different section of road in a different part of town. And it said, "Oh no," or "dethroned." And I also got a text message from Kai, "Hey, check this out." And it was a shorter KOM. It was a 3 to 4 minute. Yeah, I think it was like about a 4-minute KOM on a section of gravel road. And I posted a picture of it on Instagram, and it was really funny. I said, "What the hell is this bullshit?" And then Kai's taunting me, and I can't. The best thing to do is when you take a KOM and then the other person can't do anything about it because they're at work or they're in school or something. It's really funny. And so you can see that whole thread on Instagram, and it's really funny. A whole bunch of people chimed in. And then Kai told me that he wasn't even trying. And I was like, oh, okay, now this is totally on. If he wasn't even trying, then that means actually maybe I'll be able to take it back. And from my Ironman and time trial background, I actually do know how to go really, really fast for short segments, especially if it's flatter. And I do hold a bunch of KOMs for crazy stuff, but mostly by using aerodynamics and good position and training for it and practice for it and everything. So, and also being ruthless with strategy. You learn that in swimming with racing in heats versus other people. There's all kinds of strategies and intimidation and tactics and timing that you can use that I could hold a whole podcast. It seems like I am, but I'm not, on on Strava, KOM Hunting is what they call it. Tactics. You want the weather to be right and all sorts of stuff. So I look, and the weather's actually going to be right. It's going to be tailwind-ish, sort of like a crosswind, not very much. But again, Kai took it without even trying. So I'm like, I got to take this one back. And he'd taken it by like 20 seconds or so. And the devious thing was he wanted to ride with me on Saturday morning, and we went out riding. And so I said, I'm going to go slow, and what are you going to do? And he's like, I got to do like whatever effort, heart rate, this and that and the other. So he's going to do like an actual real bike ride. And I said, I'm just going to recover and go slow, because I was actually kind of tired and feeling kind of poopy. And I said, you just go on ahead. So we started at the same time. We stayed together for about 20, 30 minutes, and then he just go off. But what he didn't know was my plan. My secret plan was to go super easy so that when I hit that area of road, I could try to take the KOM back. And I did. I hit that next section of road. I avoided anything that was difficult on the way, any hills on the way, everything. I rode super easy. So it was almost like a 2-hour warm-up is what I was aiming for. And then when I hit that section of road, I had that Strava Live segment stuff set up specifically for that segment. And it told me that I was taking the KOM, and I had it by about 20 seconds while I'm riding. Now it's got 2 uphills in it, and Kyle weighs a lot less than me, so that's where he can totally take it back. And the points where I pushed the hardest was on the uphills to make sure I didn't lose much time there. And on the downhills, I take it because I weigh a lot more than him. So I ended up beating his KOM by 20, 30 seconds or something. And I posted it all over Instagram. I got it back. People love this stuff. And so that's that. Okay, so the Strava KOM wars are on. I've got one that I always taunt him with that I just know he'll never get, because I went nuts trying to get this one KOM one time. And then let's leave that segment behind. Let's move on to, I just saw this morning that Shimano is going to introduce another rear derailleur hanger patent. Oh my gosh. After SRAM did their universal one that people can stand on, which don't do that, by the way. That universal derailleur hanger has no adjustability in it whatsoever. It's so stiff, it's got no adjustability in it whatsoever. So if you actually do bend it, or you bend your frame at all, then it'll never work right after that. So let the people on TV do that kind of thing. And that leads me to something else. I just posted on Instagram a link to an article that explains, do not sit on the top tube of your carbon fiber bike. Steel bike, aluminum bike, those are a little bit different. But if you've got carbon, and Kai's, in our case, we have magnesium bikes, which is super cool, but they have flattened ovalized top tubes. So they said, especially that on carbon. One thing is you don't clamp it in a bike stand. That is not made to take pressure, like a crushing pressure. And what happens is you won't notice anything. But if you take carbon that's thin enough, which the top tube in the middle is definitely thin, because that's where they shave off a bunch of the weight. If you take that and squeeze it, well, it's layers of carbon, right? Well, the layers on the inside and the outside don't squeeze as much as each other, right? They have different varying rates of length that they need to cover when you squeeze it. The outside doesn't squeeze as much as far as the inside. You can just imagine if you have like layers of paper past each other, the inside layers will squeeze a little bit further than the outside layers. Well, that'll rip apart the lamination of your carbon fiber layers. It'll separate them. And that's called delamination. And if you get gaps in your carbon fiber from the separation because you've applied pressure like that, one, it's not covered by manufacturer's warranty. And two, that is the number one thing in carbon where you see failures is carbon delamination from gaps. And you create those gaps in that delamination if you sit on your top tube. And the reason I posted it is I'm watching these interviews with pros, and I warn Kai about this all the time when he sits on his top tube of his bike. I say, dude, do not do that. Don't sit on the top tube of your bike. Don't put your weight on your top tube like it's a seat. It is not a seat. It is not meant to take your weight, and that's where you'll have a failure if you continue to do that. And it's your frame. It's a very expensive thing to fix. And at the end of all the gravel, Unbound gravel racing, they have all these interviews with pros, and they're all sitting on the top tubes of their bikes because they don't really know either. But the other thing is they get a new bike every year or less. Sometimes they get a new bike every big race. So they don't have to replace their frames. They never see the end result. But if you got your frame for 2-3 years and you've been sitting on your top tube, then you're going to see some damage. Okay, let's wrap that up as news and pro tips there and get on to the Unbound best and worst. I'm going to try to run through this because we want to get a show out and get this information out there while Unbound is still hot in everybody's mind. Okay, so again, this is going to be the best and worst. And what I don't like to do is complain about things without offering a solution. If something's bad, you try to say, hey, this is a workaround, right? I do that at work. I learned this from my parents. They said, don't ever go to your boss or your teacher with a problem and just complain. Then you just sound like a complainer. You say, hey, I've got this problem and I've already found a solution A, B, and C. You pick the solution. And then your boss is like, wow, this is not a problem maker. This is a solution maker. This is a person I want around. Get my pay raise. Okay, so that's the way you should go through life. When you see problems, try to offer some solutions. And that's what we're going to do here because it's a way more positive way to go through life. So for those that somehow don't know, Unbound is in the middle of Kansas, Emporia, Kansas. It's in the middle of nowhere, which is great, by the way. And it's become the unofficial World Gravel Championships. And the race that is the major race is the 200-miler. And of course, it's not 200 miles. It's like 205, whatever. They tend to do this at all the gravel races. But being that this is a gravel race that has been around for a while, this has more real. It used to be called Dirty Kansas, by the way. And they changed the name because there's an Indian tribe named the Kansas tribe, and they say dirty, and then Kansas is like insensitive. Some people thought, so they just changed it. And that's why it's called Unbound now, but historically it's called Dirty Kansas, just up until a few years ago. So again, the event within the event is the 200-miler. That's the one that people have decided is the crown jewel in all these, but it's not the longest one. There's a 350-mile one that they launch everybody off the day before, and that's actually kind of common in long gravel races and long Grand Fondos, is to have a super distance. It's called the XL at Unbound. But you should ask yourself, do you really want to do the 200? Because the 100, and we're seeing this in a lot of races, by the way, though. There's a lot of talk in the ultra off-road gravel adventure racing community about these distances are actually a little bit too long. How did we settle on these monstrous distances as the go-to distance? So what I recommend to do is look at the finishing times. I recommend to do that anyway for any race that you do, is look at the finishing times and then adjust your training and racing plan accordingly as far as fueling, water, pacing, and all that. Don't look at the numbers per se. Zero in on the finisher's time from last year, during good years, during bad years, with weather, and then you'll have an idea of what race you should actually sign up for. So Unbound has a history of having nearly tragic mud if it rains enough before the race. And it seems to rain enough before the races to cause this almost like every other year. And why people keep signing up for this, I don't know. But because it's one of the older races, and it has become one of the bigger races. And there's something where like people like to sign up for the trauma that they're going to go through. Kind of like an Ironman. Why would you do one of those? Well, it's the same sort of thing maybe, except with mud in this area, it turns to peanut butter mud, which is when it starts to dry out, it jams into everything and will literally break your bike, drive. A lot of people had to drop out of the race because of broken drivetrains, broken derailleur hangers. I've just read a story where a guy like threw his bike. He was just so mad after the 13th thing broke. And the mud, along with the grass that gets torn up, ends up jamming into your frame, and you can't even push your bike. You have to carry your bike, and your bike's jammed with mud, and it gets really heavy, and then your shoes are covered like overshoes of like concrete mud. So it gets really, really terrible. And when I did Gravel Locos, I did a whole lot of research to make sure it wasn't going to do that, because I've got my bike stuck many times in mud, especially mountain biking, in this peanut butter mud. And it is a miserable experience trying to get this done. And what the big controversy this year is the race director supposedly, I'm not claiming this as fact, but supposedly had the choice before the race to reroute the race course and avoid this horrible section of mud I'm about to tell you about, and didn't. And there's a little bit in there like, do they put people through the mud for the spectacle? And I get kind of on the side of like, this is abusive towards people if you're just like wrecking their bikes and making them have a miserable existence because of you wanting to have the spectacle of the race, and it's the hardest gravel race and such like that. Well, a lot of people didn't sign up. They sign up for a 200-mile or any distance gravel race is already hard enough, and a little bit of mud to walk through and carry your bike, that's type B fun. You know, a few hundred yards here, a few hundred yards there, that's, you know, whatever, that's part of it. But the race had 3 to 5 miles of mud at like mile 10 or 15, like early on in the race. So imagine you spent all this money and all this time to train, to get there, to buy a bike, to keep up your bike, and then to get there and stay in a hotel and all that stuff. And then you get 10 something miles into a race and you're having to walk for 3 miles. Not kidding. 3 miles was the minimum walking and carrying your bike covered in mud. And then for a significant portion of people, your bike's broken, and then they had to drop out. And then also the delays. They used up so much water at the first aid station, which is at mile 50, I guess. I have it here somewhere. Mile 42. That there was no water left for people to actually drink. And then a whole bunch of people had to drop out from dehydration. So a lot of people are saying, I don't want to quote Trump, people are saying that the race was a complete disaster. On occasion, you'll hear somebody say, I thought it was fun, because they got lucky. But the other thing is the race is so popular that there's an actual lottery to get in the race. So the race directors don't have to really worry about whether or not people had a good time or not, because there's still more people that are going to show up and do the race again anyway. And I view that as a little bit abusive towards the athletes. So if you own if you work for a company that underpays people because they know that there's still more people that will show up and take the job anyway, because it's like in a poorer community or a college town, then that's abusive towards the employees, right? So just because you got more people that'll show up and do it doesn't mean you should treat your people that way. And it's, again, if there was no choice, like say this is the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest, what's the other one? The Continental Divide Trail, which sometimes gets really muddy and messes up people's bikes and it's impassable at times. Dude, that's one thing. But there was apparently a choice that they could have rerouted. And then I heard somebody say, well, it was too late, by then. And I call bullshit on that. The place where it got really muddy, there's two places, a place at the end too. The place where it got really muddy that was breaking people's bikes and making people have to hike for miles, was a known spot. So if You are a race director, and I have been a race director many times for very small events when I put on my own events. I plan out the courses, I do all this stuff. And hey, I've done a self-supported Ironman where I had to cross a creek channel, carry my bike on my back through mud, through a construction zone. You know, like there's sometimes it's unavoidable, you know. But if you know a spot is going to be trouble, you plan and if the weather's going to turn bad and a spot's going to be trouble, you plan an alternative route around that. See, what they're saying is, oh, well, at the last minute, we didn't have the ability to, it's too hard to plan an alternate route, right? Because the route's already made. No, what you do is you plan both routes, right? For trouble spots, you plan an alternate route. And then on race day, if it rains or the day before and the place is a mud pit, you can just say, okay, alternate route, boom, done, right? It's better planning. So do that next time, people. Okay. Anyway, if this wasn't such a big race, you would be facing lawsuits from people for their destroyed bikes, people wanting damages paid for that, and also a huge drop in attendance from a poorly executed race. With the water thing, what if somebody got hurt and had to go? People get hurt at these things all the time. You're signing a waiver, but unnecessarily, you know, when you could have just had better planning. So if you put on your own race, make sure that you do these things. All right, and just to show how bad this was, the DNF rate was 43% for the 200 miler. 43%. That is nuts. Absolutely nuts. You got almost half the people didn't finish. That's like completely unacceptable for putting on a race. Unless the whole point of the race is it's a race where it's very likely that you won't finish, like the Barkley marathons, where some years nobody finishes, or like it's SEAL boot camp, you know, where some years nobody graduates. Some years nobody finishes. Well, you know, there are those types of races, but that's not really what people sign up for. Okay, beyond that, I did some research on the aid station situation. And this is something that shows the history of this race. Because again, we got to go back to the history of the race, okay? I'm talking all this negative stuff that, like, you could have... I'm talking all this stuff about how it was miserable and they should have done better or whatever. But also, real gravel adventure racing kind of has this, like, built into their roots in a way. If it's an older race, dude, they are hardcore. It is going to be difficult. And if you're coming from a racing background where you got an aid station every mile, like the run on a marathon or an Ironman marathon, and an aid station every 10, 15 miles on the bike, and it's, you know, it's road, so it's like the aid stations just as you only need like a water bottle or two, and then you keep cranking these things out. Dude, that's not what this race is like. This race is old school. The 350 miler, no aid stations, completely self-supported. You have to pack all your own food, and you get food and water at gas stations along the way. Think about that, okay? And then the 200 miler, 2 aid stations. That's it. And if you've ever done off-road stuff and then seen it go like mud or sand, things get bad and a lot of hilly terrain, an aid station for 200 miles, an aid station at mile 42, and then another aid station at mile 124. Dude, you seriously have to turn your bike into a water truck. Now, what they do allow is you to have a race crew and show up at mile 79 and mile 67, I think. No, 167, sorry. So you end up, if you have a support crew, with 4 aid stations. The other 2 aid stations I mentioned at the beginning at mile 42 and 124, it's water only, not food. Just think about this. Like, this is really, really crazy and really hardcore. And then you start getting back into the, okay, well, maybe the 3 miles of hiking through mud is, it's not so much out of the picture of this thing. But as newer gravel races come along And like I did Gravel Locos, for example, I don't know, there was like 4 aid stations, I think, for 150 miles that were stocked, and almost no mud to walk through. And then, there's different events. There's a lot of gravel events now that you could pick like different events and better events according to what you want to go through. All right, so then let's get to, the 2 other checkpoint aid stations at mile 79 and mile 167. You're allowed to have your, family, friends, whatever, come out and help you out. There's even like a service where you can pay. And if you're a member of that paid whatever, they'll have food and water for you. Okay. Anyway, there's like a whole industry around this thing. I highly recommend that if you ever get into to do this race, bring somebody or bring some friends that are going to support you with these other aid stations. I would not do a 200-mile race without 4 aid. Dude, you got to stop, especially because it's gravel and it could be mud. You're out there forever. One of the slowest times was 21 hours. 21 hours. That is crazy. So back to some more details. The first aid station with all this water, they ran out of water because everybody's hosing down their bikes to try to get the mud off. And it's just like, once something goes wrong, you start having cascading effects of going wrong. It's just the Chernobyl of gravel races. So then 100-milers didn't have water because about like the second half of them because they ran out of water. And then another comical thing that's happened to me twice during races, at least twice, is a train blocked the race as it came through. What was so dumb, and I don't know, it's kind of avoidable. You could find out the train schedule, I think it really depends, is there was a train immediately after the 100-mile start. And like, I think some people got past it and then the train started. So a whole bunch of people had to stop, which kind of ruins the race if you're really in it to win it or, trying to be competitive. But hey, that's kind of a thing that's like, well, it's almost out of your control. I would, if I ran that race, I would try to, I don't know if they can, because I've heard one time that the train companies, whatever, the railroad company won't tell you. They're like, yeah, that's either private information or we're just not sure, not able to tell you. So it's really beyond their control or your control. But anyway, there was a train right after the 100-mile start, so that really sucks. My experience with that is you get to sit there and you get to meet a lot of people while you sit there and wait. It just sucks that it was like right at the beginning of the race. If it's the middle of the race or towards the end of the race, man, it's great because then you get to catch your breath and check on things. It's, but at the beginning of the race, it's kind of terrible. And then also it's like having that mud event at the beginning of the race and ruining your race right from the beginning. It'd be one thing if you got almost to the end and then your race ruined. At least you got in a whole lot of riding. Okay, then the thing that a whole bunch of other things. One was somebody reported they had like every kind of weather. They had sun, wind, rain, even a little bit of hail at the end, which now I'm getting kind of like, oh, that's kind of fun, to have everything. Now you're getting an experience. And then a tip for people having to carry their bike or riding a muddy course. I rode on the Unbound was on Saturday, and here in Texas, we had a whole bunch of rain. Same storm system, actually. And then I went out riding the next morning, and there was a surprise section of mud on my race course. And that's why I'm saying, like, I'm not against there being mud on the course. It's type B fun, You're like, oh, cool. Well, not really cool, but, oh, this is interesting. And I had to carry my bike for, I forgot how far, a couple hundred yards through mud. Maybe that. But I was not expecting it. They've done some construction on this gravel road, and where they've put down the substrate or whatever, now it's muddy. So that's created a problem. And I was like, oh, carry my bike. Dude, carrying a bike is really freaking hard. And there's 2 tips I have on that. Is if you carry your bike and you're expecting that you might have to carry your bike a long ways, they make a strap. You can buy one online that you could like tuck away. It's just a strap, and then you can carry your bike a whole lot easier on your back. People do this for the race where you have to cross the Grand Canyon. And if you're crossing the Grand Canyon, it's illegal for you to have your bike even on the ground. Your bike tires are not supposed to touch the ground. So you carry your bike on your back. So anyway, they make like a strap system for that. And they make one that's actually really small, a top tube strap, which is kind of cool. And then the other one is the second that you notice that it's peanut butter mud, stop riding your bike, get off your bike and carry it. And that's what I did on Sunday because I've made this mistake before. Well, I'm just going to keep pushing my bike. Don't push your bike through that stuff. It's going to gunk up and gunk up and gunk up and get worse and worse and worse. What you actually do is the second that you notice that this is clogging mud, get off your bike and carry it. Just carry it. You'll be way better off. You'll get way less of the mud into your drivetrain. It'll be super easy to pick the mud out when you get through the muddy section, and then you can keep going. So that's what I did on Sunday. I don't know if that's really an option at this thing because the 3 miles, imagine carrying your bike for 3 miles. I saw a video from a guy who had a strap and was able to carry his bike for 3 miles. And the other one is, and I need to do this, you get a paint stirrer stick and carry that with you. And if you have a gravel bike with a tube bag, a top tube bag like I've got, then that's why I'm saying I need to do this. I need to get a paint stirrer stick and just keep it in the top tube bag. It weighs nothing. It takes up like zero space. And with that, that's what like the go-to is to get mud out of your frame because it's thin, it's strong. It'll get in between the cracks pretty easily and get all that mud out. All right. I'm going to go to Chipotle real quick and grab a burrito, and I'll be right back, and we can finish out the rest of this best and worst of the Unbound race. All right, we are back. That Chipotle was really good. I eat about half. I ask for a piece of tinfoil, well, usually more than half. I also ask for a piece of aluminum foil whenever I check out, and then I wrap the last third of the burrito and bag it up and take it with me. And then I eat it as an afternoon snack right before I go home and before my evening workout. Anyway, on that note, 2 other things to mix in some triathlon in with this gravel bike podcast. I tried something new. Running in Texas in the summer is so hot that you got to learn to carry some water with you, even for an hour run. It makes a huge difference in this heat. And if you do ultra marathon running, you learn that you want running shorts with pockets. That way you can carry all kinds of fuel and stuff like that. So over the years, many, many years, I've collected running shorts with pockets. And you want kind of deepish pockets, not shallow ones, deep ones. And I've figured out that I can run with a water flask like this. I have this 10.5 ounce hard water flask that usually you snap to your running belt. This waist belt thing that you can wear from, I forgot the name of the brand. I'll remember in a minute. And then but it's like 10.5 ounces and I do a little bit of fuel in it. I do a 100 calorie scoop of Gatorade. And then that way it's kind of a little bit over concentrated for that amount of water, but because it's plain Gatorade, it doesn't have too much sodium in it, so it doesn't hurt your stomach. Well, I tried something the other day and it really works. I have some Solomon brand running flasks that go like in your running vest, and they're the collapsible soft flask. It's kind of like the Camelback material, and they hold 16 ounces. I have 2 of these, and I've been using them in the frame bag of my gravel bike to carry extra water, which really works. Fantastic. And I thought, what if I carried that I carry my phone in one pocket and 10.5 ounces of water to start, or Gatorade, in my right pocket. And then there are 2 water fountains along the way. And I'll just top off a little bit with the water fountain. And River will drink from the second water fountain for sure. Dude, it is unbelievably hot. And again, as a triathlete, you work out so much. You're not fueling for this workout. You're fueling for a little bit. Half of it's this workout and half of it's the next workout. So you want to stay on top of your hydration for sure. And dude, these things work great for running with carrying a little bit of water in your running shorts pocket. I was surprised. I could carry almost 16 ounces, so definitely 14, which is way more than the 10 and a half that I was doing. And then also because they're soft-sided and they collapse as you use them, they get smaller and smaller and smaller as you use them. So it's only kind of annoying right at first. And as you start drinking, they go down in size. And because they're soft, they conform to your body a little bit better as opposed to any kind of hard thing that you're using whatsoever. And it's awesome. I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. Okay, that's enough of our ultra running segment that we just jammed in here. I was watching at lunch Dylan Johnson showing a video with another rider, their bike for gravel locos, their bikes for gravel locos, and they also rode pretty much the same setup, but they're going to make another video for Unbound. And it's really, really interesting. I recommend you check it out because you can see how people nerd out on this stuff. Cyclists are all alike. If you want to go fast, there are modifications you make to everything on your bike. It's really cool. And I'll get to some of those that they talked about here in a second. On the good and bad of Unbound, one of the bad things was the live coverage. For me, totally sucked. It was like, how do you watch this race? Which was so frustrating because they've had live coverage before, right? So we know they can do it. And that coverage was, I guess, okay-ish. I thought it was fine. I don't really remember. And they kept saying, oh, the live coverage is on Instagram. Well, Instagram live feeds is like these very short videos, and a lot of them are shot vertically, which is terrible for watching anything that you really are into. And there was no commentary, nothing like that, right? And so people will say, well, it's out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe not enough people watched last year. Well, dude, you gotta like stick with something for a while. It's like a race. Unbound was 30 people or 34 people the first year that they put it on, right? And then now it's like 4,000 something people. So you can definitely stick with something for a few more years. And then the other thing is, oh, they don't have a lot of money. It costs a lot of money. Okay, this was the Garmin Unbound, and then also sponsored by Kraft. Now, I could see Kraft, and it's not Kraft Foods, it's Kraft Clothing with a C. Kraft may not have the money to sink into this for live coverage. This is the biggest bike race in North America. It's the biggest bike race with the most amount of attention in North America, and they don't have live coverage of this thing. Oh, it's out in Kansas, out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, well, Garmin is the title sponsor. Think about this. Ironman does live coverage of their races now. They do it on like Facebook Live most often. And it's actually pretty good, right? They got commentators, all that stuff. It's not terrible. Ironman is a $750 million company. I did my research. I don't like I said, I don't complain unless I got some solutions here. $750 million company at most, okay? Garmin, the title sponsor of this race, is a $20 billion company. So you're talking that it's like 30 to 40 times bigger of a company than Ironman, and they can't figure out how to throw the money at this thing to give it live coverage. Garmin is not just Garmin that you think about with bike computers and watches. Garmin is huge. They do avionics, which is the computers and guidance systems for planes, for jet aircraft. They do guidance systems for marine, like nautical, like ocean going kind of equipment. Dude, they are just absolutely massive. So Garmin, title sponsor, let's figure out a way to throw some more money at this thing so that you get some live coverage. It's embarrassing that this is the biggest race. And the reason it's a problem, it's not just because, the audience wants to watch this thing, right? The pros spend all their time and money getting to this thing. Their career's on the line, and they put forth this effort, and then they get minimal coverage, minimal exposure which leads to minimal branding, minimal return on their investment for coming and doing this. Dude, seriously, a company like Garmin could figure out how to put some blimps up in the air as self-created cell phone towers. I'm just saying. It's not completely out of the picture. So come on, let's step it up a little bit. You did it before, you can do it again. And do it not just for the audience, do it for the pros. Take care of your pros. Something else that we've learned from Ironman. People that sign up for races watch how the pros get treated, you know? And if the pros don't get treated well, I'll leave that out. Okay. So what's ended up happening is, the upside is that a lot of people, I think they would do this anyway, carry GoPros on their bikes. You have to wait a while. You have to wait days. And then all of a sudden, the video footage starts leaking out of everything that happened. And yeah, it's been a few days. That's why it takes a while to put out a show to review this thing, because you got to wait for people to mix down. I know from making a podcast, people got to put together all the video clips and whatever they want to do, how heavy their production is, and put a show together with all this. And then you start seeing the inside stories. So an upside is, nowadays, is we are going to see a ton of GoPro footage from this race. It's so cool. But again, that's individuals doing that for themselves. Let's have like real coverage from the people putting on the race itself. And also another thing that's cool about the GoPro coverage is that you get the personal stories and the narration. It is fun. It is fun to watch. Okay, let's see. The live tracking for the XL, the 350 miler, I didn't hear any complaints. It looked pretty great to me, and I watched some of it until the 200 miles started, and I kind of lost interest in the 300 because that was starting to wrap up anyway. I was watching specifically Ted King, who dropped out, by the way. So you got a former pro racer, Tour de France racer, who was like, this mud is too much. And yeah, it was kind of cool. And I liked it that they differentiated in color, the males versus the females. So that was neat to see. So it was easy to pick out your racers and follow them. You could favorite them. They got a good app for that. That was pretty nice. It's, it's just dots on a map. They call people that do that dot watchers, people that follow races remotely. And so I was being a dot watcher starting Friday afternoon. I think it started Friday at 3 o'clock. I'm in the same time zone as that, so that was handy. And then let's see. Oh, and another thing, that the lack of decent live coverage. There was live coverage at times, very sparse and hardly any commentary of actually what was happening. But there was some kind of live coverage maybe at the finish line, and the video footage of the finish line was of the sprint finish at the finish line for the biggest of the crown jewel of the race, the 200-mile race, with the former pros, like big and current pros, Lachlan Morton, Keegan Swenson. I mean, this is huge. You could barely see anything, and the races all use one finish. And this is beginning to become a problem, because you end up with really slow people, which is fine. I've been really slow. I crossed the line at Gravel Locos pretty slowly, okay? So that's not a problem. But having slow people, and lots of them, crossing the narrow finish line chute, because it's a downtown street, like a 2-lane street. At the same time, the pros, who are the fastest people out there and the most on the line, there's prize money, sponsorships, all that, trying to fight their way through we'll just call them age groupers, like triathlon, trying to fight their way through the age groupers, because you've got these different races all finishing kind of at the same time. And it's a problem, because somebody's going to get hurt. And also it can affect the outcome of the race. People are dodging around each other. And yeah, so you'll get the gravel purists that'll say, oh, this is the race. This is it. It's so cool to have everybody all on the race course at the same time. I'm not arguing against that. That's one of the coolest things about triathlon, is you're all on the same race course at the same time. You get to mix and mingle with the pros at the start. And then as the race goes on, the people in the front break away, and then they cross the finish line nice and clear, and they're not being clogged up by age groupers. I mean, we saw this Ironman Hamburg problem incident where somebody got killed. That's when you got too many people on the course at the same time in the same spot and mixing age groupers in with pros, and it can lead to serious problems. And what's the solution for that? There's a whole bunch of different solutions. None of them are like fantastic, but when somebody gets hurt or killed at the finish line, or somebody just completely loses the race because they get stopped up by age groupers and they couldn't get around them, you'll see the very next year they'll change it. So why not change it now before it becomes a problem? You could have different finishing chute areas for the different races. Like if we see this all the time, at the end of an Ironman, you're doing loops on the run. If you're doing another loop, keep going straight. If you're finishing, go to the right. You can definitely split things and have people 100 milers to the left, 200 milers to the right, whatever. But keep them still kind of close, so it'll work. That was one solution that I've heard. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that. I am a fan of people finishing around the same time. I said that on my last podcast about Gravel Locos. They started everybody at the same time, and then people finished at all crazy times. And by the time I got to the finish line, because I was mid-pack for the long race, everybody's like gone. There's no like festival left anymore. It kind of sucked. So I get it. You do want to have people finishing at the same time, but you gotta at the finish chute, you gotta break things up a little bit so that one race isn't affecting the other, or else somebody is eventually going to get hurt. I mean, these pro racers coming in hot. They're putting everything on the line. And you see in pro racing all the time, like Cavendish, thrown into the barricades. And those guys are the best, and they're all going the same speed. Imagine the difference in speed between certain levels of people in different races. Okay, let's move on from that. I've already mentioned before, too much avoidable mud, too close to the start. They should have changed that. It's a gravel race, not a mud race. Just like when I say, my response to somebody says, you should ride your bike on the sidewalk. I say that last word again. They go, sidewalk. I go, now say the second half of that last word, walk. I go, yeah, it's for walking. You do not ride a bicycle at normal bicycle speeds on a sidewalk, right? Well, a gravel race is a gravel race. It's not a mud race. If you want to sign up for a mud race, you can do Spartan, mud this, mud that, all kinds of things. I've done mud obstacle courses at Marine Corps Military School and in the Corps at Texas A&M, right? Those are fun, but that's what you're signing up for. It's a gravel race. So a little bit of mud is totally tolerable. That's understandable. That's kind of fun even. But there is a level past that where it's this is no longer a gravel race. That's not what we signed up for. So they ought to fix that. And another reason how to fix it is it destroys your bikes. You're talking about people with thousands of dollars of damage to their one and only pride and joy bike. And not everybody is rich in the joke in triathlon that everybody that is wealthy that buys these bikes that nobody else can afford. They're all dentists. Not everybody's a dentist. So they can't. That's a running joke, by the way. Don't take that personally if you're a dentist. It's tongue in cheek. So my father-in-law is a dentist, and he's awesome. And then not everybody has the resources to change their tires at the last minute. You got to buy a new set of tires. That's $150. And then you got to get the bike mechanic to get the tires on. You got to find somebody. Somebody suggested that, you should get a different drivetrain. Dude, what do you need? Two different bikes for the same sport, for the exact same sport? Come on, give me a break. You got to do some better planning around this mud. And let's see. The upside is, though, this is a show for triathletes. As a triathlete, you better be running some, or run walking, or speed hiking, doing something besides just biking with your legs. As a triathlete, you should be able to handle hiking through mud quite a distance. So stick with this podcast, stick with your training program. And then if you do get into Unbound, or I've heard another one, Mid-South, they call it Mud South. Then at least when you do get stuck with this adversarial situation, then you can easily hike through it anyway. It's not that. You'll end up being all right. So like I just mentioned, you can overcome mud with a better tire choice. A lot of people don't know this, although it is becoming more known, that you actually size down your tires, not up, if you're going to get into really sticky mud. Cyclocross has mud in it all the time, and those tires are really narrow for off-road, so that they will cut through the mud and dig in deeper and actually give them traction. And they ride it like that all the time. And then also, as the mud sticks to the tires, it jams into the frame, so you actually want some clearance. My front tire is actually a little bit too big, and I love it, but for my frame, I'm going to size down. It's a 50 on the front. I'm probably going to size down to I'd like to size down to a 48, but it's hard finding 48s in a 700. So I found a Pathfinder Pro, is what Dylan says he runs, and that's in a 47. So I think I might do that, for example. Another thing that you do is you can actually, it doesn't take that long and it's kind of fun, is you can, with a fingernail trimmer and a knife, and actually make a tool to do this too, a ceramic knife, like a little kitchen knife or something that's really sharp, but fingernail clippers work really well, is you can trim back the knobs on the side, the shoulder knobs on your tire, so they clear the frame a little bit better. A lot of times you don't need those knobs, especially on the rear, and that's where it's the tightest. You need them on the front for steering, so your front doesn't slide out from underneath you, but the back, not so much. And I've done that before. That was kind of fun. My wife was like, "What in the world are you doing?" I was trimming millimeters off the tires of this other gravel bike that I used to have, and it worked. It worked really great. It gave me all of a sudden the clearance that I needed. Okay, we already talked about the paint stirrer stick, and also a lot of people carry spare water. This is more like if you're just out doing a gravel training ride. Carry a spare water bottle to spray things down. So I carry spare water because my rear radar, the Garmin, will get covered in mud, and it kind of freaks me out a little bit that it might not work. It seems to still work, which is bizarre, but I rinse that off. You could spray down your rear cassette and your chain rings and your chain a little bit, get the mud off. And actually, you ought to do this if you're riding in not even mud, but a lot of dirt and a lot of miles. And if it's been raining and I get a lot of grime in my drivetrain, I did this on Sunday. My drivetrain was fine, but it was a little dirty and mucky. So I used some water to spray it down and get that off. And yeah, it works great. Kai's other coach actually recommended that to him for long bike rides, is carry a spare water bottle specifically for rinsing off your drivetrain. You're halfway through your ride. You're not going to ride off-road anymore. Now you're back on pavement. So rinse off your drivetrain while you're stopping for a water break. Okay. Another thing that people forget is you can actually carry spare chain lube on your bike in your jersey pocket, your camelback, your frame bag, top tube bag, whatever you got. And my favorite for that is Muck Off. Comes in a bigger bottle, which is 200 milliliters, 150 milliliters, something like that. But they also make a 50 milliliter bottle. And so the eyedropper size bottles of stuff, I think it's too small. That'll give you one application. And so you use it once, well, you got to refill it. And it might give you 2 applications. But the best size for me is the 50 milliliter Muck Off, because with that, I can actually use it 4 or 5 times, and it's kind of a flat bottle. It's pretty nice. I guess you could use, I've seen White Lightning comes in kind of a flat bottle sometimes. But anyway, I would do like a flatter bottle and around 50 milliliters. And again, Muck Off has a really long nose on it, so you can really get to the links and put it on. And you should reapply chain lube, even though, you're supposed to apply it and then let it dry overnight and all that with the wax. Dude, just riding along, it's going to dry out because it's getting all that air exposure and it works itself in. It is better than nothing, and it does really help. It helps a lot. So you can do that. Downside, a good and the bad. One of the bads is that there's an actual lottery to get in, I understand. I haven't tried to get in, so I don't know for sure, but I hear there's a lottery. Good thing is, dude, it's a muddy race that could be actually terrible the year that you do it. So go sign up for another race. Like, apparently there are tons and tons of races, and this applies to Ironmans, all kinds of stuff. The races that you want to get into, a lot of times it's just because of popularity has gotten out of control, and they're not that great, the super popular races, especially because they've gotten super popular. There's like a right size for a race, and for you and for what you want. So for some people, the madness of like having too many people, they like that. But races that are appropriately sized, there's still tons of them out there. So that's an upside, is you can go find any of these. And gravel races are actually really inexpensive compared to like Ironman. People think that they're expensive because they're like, this is $150, this is $200. It's like, dude, compared to an Ironman, that's nothing. So come on. And also, dude, you can just make a Strava segment loop. Seriously, you can make a Strava segment loop as long as you want. I don't know what the longest is. Somebody could Google that and let us know. But I think there's ones that are over 100 miles long easily. I think there might be 150, 200 miles long, probably. And like the longest loop that I've got is 20-something miles long. It's all the trails at the local mountain bike park in an order that I like. And then what happens is every time you ride it, it'll compare that time versus your previous time. And all the other little segments inside that other people make or that you make all work too. So you can constantly race yourself on a loop, make a loop or a route that's really, really long, and then on occasion race it yourself, and then start inviting friends. And that's how the one that Heather Jackson did in Tennessee with, who did she do that with? It wasn't Keegan, was it? Anyway, that's just a known like route that everybody likes to ride, and you can ride it anytime you want. And then you try to get the KOM on it, the FKT, fastest known time, right? Well, you can start doing your own FKT course by creating a Strava segment, and Strava will keep track of it. And it's great. I've done it. It's fantastic. So make your own gravel course and do like I do with the self-supported Ironmans. And when you're about to go do it, tell people you're about to go do it and get donations and send them over to charity. And now you're actually, instead of paying for a race, you're raising money for some foundation that you like. Okay, now some more cool stuff. The variety of bikes and the different mods is crazy at this race. And I saw what I thought was the craziest was Lachlan Morton. And if you don't know about this guy, you got to Google him. He was a road racer and really didn't like being a road racer and the team dynamics and stuff. And if you just watch any video of this guy, he's the most chill, laid back, coolest guy ever. So cool. And he's got that dark hair and the eyes that look like Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, or Rob Machado, the surfer that I used to follow when I was in the surfing big time. And there's just something about him he's got the Kavorka, from Seinfeld. There's just something about him, this magnetic animal magnetism, and that's just so cool. You just want to like hang out and be around this guy for no reason. Rich Roll was the same way. There's just something about him that you just want to just be near him. There's like, you have like a bro crush on him, but you're just like, dude, I'm just hanging out. Dude, I'm hanging out with Rob or Lachlan Morton or Rich Roll. What are y'all doing? Nothing. We're just sitting here. I could see my wife getting a phone call like that. And then, oh yeah, so his bike setup, this guy, yeah, he was a road racer, and then he started getting out of road racing, but he's got so much talent. He's a top road racer, and he races for EF, Education First, the pink team, and they started sponsoring him just to go ride crazy stuff. And he did Leadville and all stuff, and he's so good that, he kind of wins, I don't know, maybe 50% of the time, but it's his adventure riding and stuff. He's done the craziest, longest stuff, Colorado Trail, all that stuff. So this guy really knows what he's doing, especially when it's a mix of road and off-road. So gravel is like right up his alley. His bike setup was like my dream come true, in that he's riding the Cannondale, and dude, Cannondale claims that it'll hold like a 45 or maybe a I think a 45. I think that's it. That's what they claim it'll hold. Dude, this is what I talk about on gravel bikes. Don't believe the manufacturer, what they say, because what they're saying applies to the rear triangle. It does not apply to the front. He had a 53 millimeter tire in the front. And he said that was for floating over the rough terrain. He put that on before it got so muddy, by the way. And so floating over the terrain, and it's cushy, so it gives you suspension in the front. And on gravel bikes typically come without suspension. If you are going to put suspension on a gravel bike, it's the front. That's absolutely where you put it. So if you run a fatter front tire, which a lot of people can and don't know this because they haven't tried, and they think that it's weird to mismatch tires. No, I'm telling you, that's what the pros do. They mismatch tires. You put a different tire on the front than the back. The front does different things than the back does. Even there's one bike tire that they make where if you run both of them and it's the same, and it's like a big name tire. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. It's one that everybody's heard of. That says if you put it on the front, you run it this direction. If you run it on the back, you flip it around. You reverse the tread on the tire, right? So this is just what you do at advanced level racing and riding. 53 in the front, I think a 44 in the back. Yeah, because I think that the most the bike will hold is a 45. So he put a 44 in the back. And the front, he put an aero wheel. So a deep dish aero wheel. And it was like a 50 millimeter deep dish or maybe a 60. Nothing like crazy, not the craziest. But still, it was wild. And I think one was a tan wall and one was a black wall. I don't remember now. I don't have the picture in front of me, right? But that's just like, there was so much commentary on that. Like, holy crap, what is this guy doing? Well, aerodynamics matter the most on the front of the bike, okay? So if there is a place where you're going to put an aero wheel, it's the front. Doesn't make sense because you always see the disc wheel on the back. But the aero wheel on the front is the most important thing. Also, your helmet is one of the other things that is the most bang for your buck aero, because the shape is in the front, right? And that's where the wind is hitting. And then he did a mountain bike rim in the back to hold the rear tire. And then that's a lighter rim. And then that's to save weight. An aero doesn't matter so much across the back. So there's lots of examples of this. It's one of the best things about gravel and triathlon, because triathlon doesn't have UCI rules either, is you can do whatever you want. It's so crazy. So another thing that was super cool that was on the list of like, what is going on here, is I noticed, I haven't seen anybody else point this out, but I'm watching the footage and the looking at the pictures of the finish line. All three, I think, of the top finishing male pros for the 200 were wearing headphones, and they're wearing the ones that I recommend to get. They're the bone conduction headphones made by Shokz, Shokz. That way they're not in your ear, they're on your temples. And then what they do is they transmit better through your head, and then your ears are still open to hear what's going on around you. And I highly recommend getting those for running, biking outside. You can wear them at work, and you don't have to take things out of your ears for people to talk to you. And if things do get bad and you still can't hear somebody, you just tap the left side of them to pause whatever you're listening to. And I actually recommend headphones for long distance stuff, because I've done a bunch of races, marathon mountain biking races, for example, where I'm wearing them at the back. And also trail running, it's really nice. When people call you, your loved ones call you to ask where the hell you are, what are you doing? You don't have to stop to answer the phone or try to ride your bike or run. That's how I broke my elbow on the phone. You can actually keep moving while you're talking and communicating. So I was doing a marathon mountain bike race in January of this past year, and my Shokz headphones that I was wearing died. They broke after 2 years of use, or a year of use. They finally shorted out from sweat exposure, and They'd been through a lot. And they shorted out, and then I was like, well, I'm going to have to do the rest about halfway through. I'm going to have to do the rest of the race without any kind of music or anything. And typically I listen to a mix of music and podcast. And it sucked. Emily called me, and I had to pull over and talk to her, or else I was going to crash. And she's like, what are you doing? How are you doing? And I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta get back on the bike. Everything's fine. You know, like that. Where if I was actually like, the headphones were working, I could be like, oh, I'm on mile, whatever. Everything's cool. I'm doing great. I'm having a good time. But instead, it like turned it into a dangerous situation. So for the average age grouper, or you're on purpose riding in the super non-competitive pointy end of the race, you can just jam out towards the back. Dude, I've worn them in plenty of mountain bike races. And again, if you're riding Cat 2, Cat 3 towards the back, especially the longer the race, and you just kind of let the race go and then you pace yourself towards the back, nobody cares. And they are definitely safe. Okay, now let's see. I saw that. The thing that I completely disagree with that they've banned actually is aero bars. But they tried to ban them for the entire race, possibly. That came up, and people threw a fit. Absolutely threw a fit. Just like Unbound gravel, which used to be Dirty Kansas, which is like one of the oldest gravel races out there. The oldest form of biking, long distances across the countryside, has been going on forever. I'm talking like people that bike across Mongolia, people that bike around the world, people that want to bike across Europe. They use aero bars, and they don't really call them aero bars because they actually serve two purposes. They call them comfort bars. One, it gives you a position to give your hands a break because now you're resting on your elbows instead of your hands. And I'm telling you, it's really, really, really nice because gravel is rough. And so it's not like riding a road bike on pavement. It is way worse on your hands. So to actually have the aero bars, which then you use as comfort bars, is fantastic. And so they talked about banning them, and then people were like, what the hell are you talking about? Dude, I do not want to do this race without aero bars, gravel bars, whatever. The reason they're talking about banning them, though, is some pros, and I'm gonna narrow it down even further, pro roadies that come from, and maybe mountain bikers, that come from a background their entire lives where they've never used aero bars, are afraid of aero bars, and they don't have the skill set to use them. Because the whole argument against, we don't want the aero bars are unsafe, all this stuff. People are like, no, they're not. They're not unsafe whatsoever. You don't use them when you're going downhill. You don't use them when you're in a pack. Everybody knows this stuff. People have been riding aero bars on gravel forever. I've never seen a crash on gravel in aero bars. You know what I have seen? I've seen a lot of crashes on gravel on drop bars, regular bars. I've seen a lot of crashes with people clipped in or wearing a helmet. So what, should we ban those two? No, they're not related, man. The aero bars are absolutely fine. And the longer the race is, the more likely you are going to be solo by yourself into a headwind. And it sucks to be riding upright on the hoods or on a flat bar because you were told that you couldn't ride aero bars. It's definitely a skill. The triathletes are considered the worst cyclists in the world, and they can figure out how to ride aero bars all the time. It's genuinely from roadies that don't want to look like triathletes, or mountain bikers, maybe. Mountain bikers are always cool, though. They do whatever. But roadies that don't want to look like triathletes, so they've developed this hate for aero bars, and they think that it's somehow cheating. Well, let me tell you again, the real spirit of gravel, quote unquote, that people use is aero bars are actually old school. They're older than what you think, and they've been part of the sport forever. So anyway, because some roadies refuse, when they do this gravel racing thing, they refuse to use aero bars because they're scared to learn how to use them. It blows my mind. Then they accuse the racers that actually know how to use aero bars of that it's cheating because it's so much faster and it's so much more comfortable. Well, you can just take that and remember that when you're getting into a race that's really long or a gravel ride that's really, really long, there's something out there that is so good and so easy to use. And as a triathlete, you probably know how to use them. It's aero bars. So they banned them for the pros only in the 200-mile race. And the excuse for this is, well, if you're a pro, you're fast enough, you're good enough, you should be able to do the race anyway without aero bars. And that is true. You should be able to cut it and make it through. But as far as age groupers go, which most of us on here listening to this are, aero bars are still fun. But also, the lack of aero bars in the pro ranks leads to the exact same thing that they complain about, which is roadie tactics. So at the end of Gravel Locos, there was a lot of trash talk about how people were sitting in and drafting off of each other and then not putting forth enough effort towards the end. Well, without aero bars, you're forcing people to really have to work a whole lot harder. And guess what they do? They ride in packs a whole lot more. And guess what they do? They shelter off of each other. And then it leads into arguments at the end of people drafting off of each other. Put the aero bars back in, and then people won't be as afraid to take a turn at the front. Because again, another place the aero bars are fine is at the front. So take a turn at the front, to fall off the back for a little bit and then catch back up because you got aero bars. It's not that much of a punishment if you fall off. Or basically, you don't have to ride in this tight pack, this meatball, the entire time, which is what the pros are complaining about at the end of a race when they accuse somebody of not putting in enough work. Okay, enough of that. So I was a little worried about in the pro women's race, there's always this controversy that the woman that won or several women that did really well were drafting off of some of the men, and it's unfair. And that is true. That is unfair, and it's a sucky situation. I'm not really sure what they do about that. Well, they did do something. They started the pro men 5 minutes ahead of the pro women, so that broke them up. But then after the pro women, the next, I forgot how many minutes behind, they started off everybody else. Well, a lot of age grouper men are as fast as the pro women, and so when they catch up, they'll strike deals with each other, and the women will start drafting off of the men, and the women that don't do that get pissed because they're like, this is the women's race. Maybe draft off of other women, but don't draft off of the men. The men influence the women's race. So there was a little bit of interesting conversation by the second place winner that they should have a separate women's race that starts on Friday as well. And it's kind of interesting. But it was just a kind of offhanded comment. It wasn't like that serious. The thing that was interesting was another thing that she said was the race is too long for women. The 200-mile race is too long for women. That in other cycling events, they do shorter distance races. And I find that, I'm not a woman, so I don't really have a leg to stand on here, but I find that kind of like insulting, kind of like, dude, there's shorter races. Do the 100-mile race. I don't know. Right? If you feel like the 200 is too long, do the 100-mile race. And then also, in the name of equality, yes, I totally understand that, the men are faster and that they do the race in a shorter amount of time. And I get that. That's not what I'm saying. But in the name of equality with men and women, and the women can finish the race, and a lot of the pro women are finishing the 200-mile race way before the average males, right? I get passed by pro women all the time. Even when I was really fast at Ironman, I still get passed by pro women. And the race is not too long for women to do. And Ironman actually set the standard for that as one of the sports. They were one of the first sports that said men and women do the exact same distance. There is no difference. We're not going to make a shorter distance for women. There's going to be equality here. Everybody has to do the exact same distance. That's actually kind of cool. Where Ironman needs to do some work is getting the number of female pros into the World Championship. All right, moving on from that. All right, anyway, moving on from that, there was 2 female pros that was super interesting to us because they are Ironman pro triathletes as well. Although Heather Jackson has just retired officially, she says, from pro Ironman and has focused on gravel. And she won the Belgian waffle ride in California. And she claimed that is the biggest win of her life, even though she's won a whole bunch of Ironmans, which is nuts. That's how big this gravel thing is going on right now. And Heather Jackson is also a trail runner now and won some long distance ultra marathon trail run race too. So Heather was definitely a favorite. I was listening to a podcast where they were reviewing the pros that were the favorites to win and stuff, and they mentioned Heather Jackson, and they're like, is she a dark horse? And they were like, no, dude, she's legit. She could win this thing. She won Belgian waffle ride. She's a retired former pro triathlete, Ironman triathlete. This is like right up her alley. So there was Heather Jackson, and then I noticed friend of the show, Angela Nath, was going to do the race. And Angela Nath is also a pro Ironman triathlete and a powerhouse on the bike. I think that might be, I'm pretty sure that's her strength out of the 3. And I was just like over the moon. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love it to see Ironman triathletes doing this and see how they do, and also shock everybody. Dude, if they allowed aero bars, oh my God. But anyway, because of the mud and the situation, and this is what I don't like about the mud thing again, is it throws an unnecessary kink in things. Heather Jackson had a bad mechanical. I think it turned her bike into a single speed for a portion of the race. Like she couldn't shift, couldn't do anything. And they're both Shimano sponsored, I think. So there was a Shimano aid station where they cleaned up their drivetrains and they kept going. But Angela Nath got 12th and Heather Jackson got 18th. So that's pretty amazing. So congratulations to them. That was really cool to see. I can't wait to see the videos that they put out of their adventures. They are both great narrators and really inspirational for the sport. Heather has like this huge grin on her face the entire time that she's racing. Like she's laughing the entire time. I don't know how she's doing that and always like, I think she's right. She's like, it reminds me of me when I do well. I'm like a just shock of myself. I'm like, what is going on? I can't believe how good I'm doing. Well, she's like that all the time. And then Nath is kind of the same way and also runs a support group for support. Sounds like an addiction problem or something like that. But no, like a support group for female cyclists and Ride Like a Girl, maybe, I think is what it's called. To get more women out on biking. There's something like that in mountain biking too called Grit, girls riding something in it together. And so they're both like really inspirational in the sport. So I love to see that. That's really great. So their stories are going to be awesome. All right, that's the best and worst of Unbound. And we'll take a little break here and then come back and finish the show. All right, I'm back. I'm actually on my way home from work and saw a couple more things that I just knew would pop up. With all the media coverage from Unbound, GCN did a bit on whether people are just complaining too much, that races should be hard. And as the crown jewel race, the marquee race, of course it should be insanely difficult, right? And people are just whining. And I'm like, yeah, that's true for sure. But again, the Unbound 200 had a 47% DNF rate. 47%. And GCN was saying, well, it's the hardest gravel race. That's what it's supposed to be. Well, I looked up Norseman, for example, because they mentioned it actually is the hardest triathlon. That's got like a 12% DNF rate, 12%. And then I was like, okay, what is considered like the hardest race in the world by a lot of people? The Tour de France. It's got a 23% DNF rate. So this is double that. And I don't think people are signing up for something as hard as the Tour de France. So in my book, the race was kind of a fail. I've found in myself that I always say things in percentages because it's never completely black and white. So it's I would say the race is like a 50% fail. Maybe, it's 47% fail. How about that? You know, it's easy to say that people are just complaining and that it's supposed to be the hardest race. But when it's a nearly half DNF rate, and when you start bringing into the equation all the damage done to people's bikes, that's uncool. It's just uncool when they could have rerouted the course and made it go somewhere else. You know, you're totally not taking into consideration about how much people put into their, how much time and money people put into this. And if people are wealthy, sure, you know, they don't really care, sure, but a lot of us aren't in that situation. All right, we're back to wrap up the show. A few things have happened since I just left you at lunch. I'm on my way home to actually go for a bike ride. I can't wait. It's summer, so the sun's up later. It's going to be nice. Going to get in an hour on the bike. So the stories keep pouring in about Garmin Unbound. Garmin was the title sponsor. Jeff, sorry, I was thinking Jebka. Jeff Kabush, who actually I raced against at the Cactus Cup time trial. He was the guy that went right before me and just destroyed me 2 years ago. Not this year, but last year. And Cactus Cup is a 3-day mountain bike race. Oh, it's so cool. Time trial first day, marathon mountain bike course, so 40-something miles. Day 2 and day 3 is a enduro race. Kai and I have done it the past 2 years. I wish I was making podcast episodes about it because it was nuts. So Jeff Kabush, who is an Olympian, by the way, as they announced him as he went right before me in the time trial. God, I was like, I'm so in the wrong race. He said on Twitter, you know, $1 billion company sponsoring a race, you think they would have done something like this? And then he showed a picture of Garmin's solution to huge data uploads to the internet in remote places. It's a picture of a Jeep with a big satellite dish on top. That's, the massive upload speeds so that you could get your coverage out there, your video feed out there for the race. And so I saw that tweet and I replied back, $20 billion company, not just $1 billion company. And okay, so there's that. And then another interesting thing was, I forgot to mention, Lachlan Morton he's so chill and so cool and everything. And he said the only thing, gravel's just going through growing pains with all the rules is what he was talking about. Of pros using aero bars or not, things like that. And he said the one thing that'll ruin triathlon is ruin gravel is if you start getting teams in with team tactics. And at first, Reed, I totally agreed with him, right? And I get what he's talking about, because teams will band together and then not everybody has a team, right? So it's not really fair. And so to keep things even, you don't want everybody, to have teams. It's either teams or not teams. Just the Tour de France, it's all teams, right? You don't have independent racers. If you go independent in Tour de France, you're doomed, right? Well, not everybody can afford to be on a team. So that he's saying that would ruin gravel. And then I saw a story today that kind of threw a wrench in that. And the 7th place finisher, I don't want to name names, also because I forgot his name, but the 7th place finisher, there was a short article saying that he publicly thanked a team member, so I guess they're on the same team, that gave him a wheel when his wheel, I guess, went flat or something like that. And I'm like, crap, what the hell is this, dude? This is team tactics. Somebody giving somebody a wheel that's on a team. And then I thought about it more, and I said, well, when Kai and I race, my goal is to ride behind him. And it's a different goal, though. If Kai has trouble, I'm there to salvage his race so that he can finish. He's out of contention to win, right? I'm just there, so that he's my kid, man. I want him to have a good time. I want the sport of cycling, to be a lifetime sport. And I want him to have fun. And so would I give him my entire bike? Would I give him my wheel and then give up the race? I don't know. Maybe it kind of depends on the race and how much left there is to go, and kind of how I felt about it if I was trying to really race myself. But I would definitely give support, right? I would give support. And then I thought about the times with Ironman triathlon where there's like Chrissy Wellington, all these stories of you can get support from other racers, right? Like, say you have a flat tire and somebody hands you a CO2. You can't get outside support from a support crew, but you can get support from the other racers. If somebody goes by and throws you a CO2 cartridge, I think that's considered fine. A spare tube, right? And there's lots of that. So then now you're getting into this gray area, right? Where is it? Oh, and then Chrissy Wellington went on to win? So I don't know, right? It starts getting weird. I think the story from Unbound, where a fellow teammate sacrificed a wheel so that the other person could get 7th, which is really high up there. I think you're kind of falling on the... I could be wrong. There's always more to a story. But I think you're kind of falling on the wrong side of not what we're looking for. But gravel could evolve, Well, okay, there's another thing, is that before Ironman brand came along, long-distance triathlons were put on by all different companies, and there's all different kinds of standards, and it was the Wild West. And that was just the way things were. Some races were like this. Some races are like that. Dude, I've done triathlons where they're backwards, and it's cool. And then what standardization does, Ironman really standardized the distance, the field, the type of course, that they standardize the whole event. And the thing that they teach in Zen is if you make everything the same, then you can actually see what stands out. So standardizing triathlon by the Ironman brand made triathlon take off as a huge sport, because now you could really compare people race to race to race. Because before it's like, well, they did well at this one race, but that one race was so different than this other race, and that race is so different from this other race, so you can't really compare people. It's like if you had basketball games where the rules are different and the court's a different size or something, and like all over, you can't really tell who the best players are because it's so random, right? Well, gravel's like that right now. Gravel is non-standard all over the place, and you're going to see crazy stuff happen and different rules. As long as there's different rules at different races, you're going to have a lot of controversy and a lot of upset. But I don't know, like the different races, the different types of events is actually really cool. So we'll see. And then one last thing before we go is I was talking earlier about Kai and I racing each other in the different KOMs, King of the Mountain segments on Strava. When I did take that one back from Kai, the 3-minute one, I beat his time by like 20 seconds. And then I didn't make the ride public, so he didn't get the notification until he was at work and couldn't do anything about it. I was actually worried that if I took the KOM back and then told him too early, he would go back out and take it in the same day. That's how I was trying to protect this thing for a little bit. And I I fully expect he's going to take it back anytime. It won't be hard for him to do that. But yeah, so the KOM tactic was ride easy, then go really hard to take the KOM, and then don't talk about it until it's too late for him to do anything about it all day. and it worked. I remember I got back. Kai is very chill, and growing up with me, because I mess with him a bunch, because he and I have a really fun relationship, and he's developed this attitude of being unflappable. You could really like try to tease him about something, or try to get his, as we say where I live, get his goat, like aggravate him by saying something, pick at him, and he does nothing. He's so chill and so level. So I told him as he was on his way out the door, I said, "Oh, Kai, by the way, I took that KOM." And he turned and looked at me and he stared and he goes, "Huh, well, I really wasn't even trying anyway." And I go, "Oh yeah? You're not going to go out and try to get it back?" And he goes, "Nah, well, I'll get it whenever," like that. I was like, dang, dude, that's so chill. And so I actually do that too, as Emily and I have actually talked about it a bunch. There's a correct amount of challenge and back and forth agitation between the two of us that motivates Kai to keep going. And I make sure that if something's going to be demoralizing, I don't say anything. And for example, like I consider, like, would I help Kai in a race if I come up behind him and he's got a flat tire? I consider, like, is this race something that is, and y'all should do this too, when you pick out races and training and stuff, you pick out things that are inspirational and make you want to keep going. It's not just like, it's not about today's workout. It's also not just this race. You want to race today so that you want to keep racing tomorrow. And if a race, Kai not finishing a race, would be actually better for Kai's or anybody's career, lifetime sport than DNFing. Wait, quitting, I got them mixed up. But anyway, it doesn't matter. If quitting is actually better for them, because let's say they got another race coming up, I say, you know what, you should just quit anyway, because it's not going to help you now at this point to keep going. You rest, save your energy, teach them that one mindset. Your bike's blown up, dude, and don't worry about it. This race, wasn't like, you always have like a plan B and a plan C for races. And so Kai and I, we have this relationship where I taunt him and I tease him and stuff and keep him going. And I tease him just enough to make him want to keep going. And then also, but I leave it alone if it's something where I can tell, like, it's going to bug him too much. Like I don't, like I would say he only beat me because I'm twice his age, so of course he beat me. Because I know his comeback, and he's like, well, you've been doing this forever, you should still be really good, and you're not that old. And then I'm like, yeah, okay, so like that's the perfect amount, but also because I know him like really well. All right, on that note, so taking the KOMs back and forth from each other, doing it just enough and picking the right ones is actually a strategy I do to keep Kai hungry and thinking that he can always do a little bit better. Because if his old man can take a KOM back, well, then Kai should definitely be able to take the KOM again back the other way, and he'll get around to it. All right, on that note, as far as coaching goes, I have a couple more coaching spots open. We use Training Peaks, the industry standard, the one the Olympians use. I've been coaching with Training Peaks for 10, 12 something years. And we use power meters, heart rate. We do it all. We do all the different sports. Ironman triathlon, Ultraman, trail running, long distance swimming, all 3 sports. And it's totally customized coaching. It's $200 a month. Actually, it's $199. And I work with you to get you started, to get you going, to keep you going. and get towards that big goal. And we look at your overall training stress score, and we do a build. And also I'm familiar with polarized training, Maffetone method, all the different training styles. It's kind of like Bruce Lee. If what you do is you learn all the training styles, and then you can apply them as needed per person in every battle. And yeah, using those tools, build you a totally customized training plan, check in with you on the regular, get feedback, and modify your plan to keep you progressing towards your goal. So you can get me as your personal coach by reaching out to texafornia@gmail.com. Again, it's TEXA, Texafornia, like California, texafornia@gmail.com, and we can get you started. Let me know. All right, everybody stay safe out there. Work the uphills, cruise the downhills, and keep the rubber side down. Out.